pulling out the jacket cause we're turning up the heat. I wanna see you clapping when you get up out your seat. It's time to make it happen when we hit these streets. I'm coming in hot and I can't be beat. Watch out now. Everybody watch out. Watch out.
Welcome everyone. It's episode 50. All things PR, the subject of today's vodcast. I want to say a couple of thank yous as always. Thank you to our producer Caitlin for behind the scenes making everything happen, and thank you to Abby as well, who gets all our show guests here and gets all the diary sources out for us. Massive thank you to Forecast. They are our show sponsors. They sponsor our not-for-profit community, our social enterprise agency, Nomics, the community behind our book, which, as you all know now, hopefully has been fully revised and updated. It's got over 50% more new content on it, and I can't recommend it highly enough. But I mean, if you haven't bought a copy, read a copy, please go and check it out. People do affectionately call it the Bible of guides to scaling up an agency from zero to the first 5 million. So do that. Also, when on the subject of Forecast, Forecast and Cactus, myself and the team at Forecast, we put together a review of the service delivery in the State of the Nation's kind of report around service delivery. So if you haven't seen that yet, we'll put a copy in the show notes today. Go and check it out. Some interesting findings there around everything you need to know about how to optimize and delivering your services through your agency, which I think is more important than ever right now. We're in a period of skill shortage, and we have to kind of do a lot more with a lot less. And so you might find that report interesting. So please check it out. Thank you. So Rachel, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I'm going to sort of start off by saying, I'm going to get you to give a little bit of background, because you have got a fantastic background story and how you got to where you are today. And we spoke a few months ago, and I embraced the Matchmaker platform, and I've been having all sorts of fun with it, but it has been a real eye-opener. I've been sharing it with all of my clients, because I just realized what a powerful platform it is and what a useful tool it is. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay. So just, Rachel, tell us a bit about sort of who you are, what your background was, brief background, and then how you kind of got to where you are today.
Yeah, no, cool. This is your life, isn't it? Okay, so my whole career
I've got a red book somewhere. Bring it out.
Have you? We've got a red book. So my whole
Somewhere.
career has been media, and so I've done the whole agency journey as well. So I started off in radio on the sales side and working with SMEs. So I was responsible for working with direct clients, so clients that didn't have an agency at the time. And absolutely loved it. And it was all repetition. It's what you say times how many times you say it. So I got to understand kind of the media world and advertising and stuff like that. And then I was there for 5 years. It got taken over by the Capital Radio Group. Just loved my time there. I was their youngest ever junior sales executive. Then I left as their youngest ever direct sales manager. And I met my partner at the time. He was also working at BRMB. And as you'll hear, I'm a Brummie, so you'll know it's a Midlands radio station. And he wanted to set up an ad agency and work for himself. And I'd really got no inclination to be an entrepreneur. I was a really good saleswoman, loved it. He set me a target and I would hit it. But we did set up an ad agency. So I approached all my direct clients and said, look, if you come with us, we'll look after you. We'll work hard on your budgets. And I think I started off back in 1996. This is how long ago it was, with about 330,000 turnover. I remember it specifically, which wasn't bad, And it was great because at the radio station that we came from, BRMB, gave us a credit account because they did then. The newspapers had to give us a credit account. So we hustled our way through setting up the ad agency. Loved it. So I did above the line, below the line, everything actually but PR. And it's probably just best to say it right from the beginning. I'm dyslexic, so I actually have a fear of writing. And, the minute I start typing and people are watching me when I screen share, I go into panic mode. So PR wasn't something we did. So we did, you know, all the, as I say, above the line, below the line stuff. So we had that agency for about 8 years. We grew to about 20 staff. We had one large account which we took over, and it was a typical, I don't know if you know, growing an agency, sometimes you get too big a client, and we had a phones for you clients with John Caldwell, a £10 million account, and he pulled the plug overnight whilst we were working halfway through the account, and it was just, anyway, so we closed the agency down responsibly. We found everybody jobs.
We talk about that in the book. It's called eggs in one basket syndrome.
Is that what it's called? Oh God, the lessons we learn in life. But actually, when we closed the agency down, my daughter was really young, and I've got to say the agency owned me. And I'm sure some of us have been there, you know, or some of you may be there, in that you know, your clients own you. You're in that loop where you can't afford to not get the next client or whatever. So it was actually good to take some breathing space, because I was literally full-time back to work after 6 weeks when Annabelle was young. Worked all the way up to my pregnancy. So she was only young, so I took some time out, and got a bit bored actually, and then just came up with the idea of thinking, actually, I could kind of come up with an idea of creating my own magazine, which I did. So I created my own magazine called Mums in Control for working mums, because my background was advertising, selling. I knew how to do all the marketing. So I created my own business, franchised it around the country. And I think at our peak, we're printing about 250,000 copies per print run. So we're larger than some of the glossy women's magazines. And it was just the magazines to help mums achieve the perfect work-life balance. So I interviewed loads of celebrities. And back in 2008, when it was flying, do you remember those days? We used to make lots of money in our businesses, and we used to have budgets and all sorts. So I then wanted to really raise the profile of the magazine and raise my own profile, but didn't know how to go about it. So that's when I hired a PR agency. Now, one thing I will say, PRs do a great job. So today I'm here to work with PRs, and, you know, we have a platform that works with them and all agencies. So PRs do a great job. But then if you remember, in 2009, we had the credit crunch, and literally everything dried up overnight, and my business got really challenged. So I'd gone from getting loads of PR. I'd been in the Daily Mail. I'd been on Good Morning Britain with Lorraine Kelly, done lots of other bits and few bits and bobs. And I'll share with you the reason why I then stopped using the agency. And then because I couldn't afford the PR fees anymore, I just got to be really good at PR, and got featured on most of the radio stations, most of the TV channels, most of the newspaper groups. And I can share with you how I got all that and how it worked. So I've kind of done all the agency bits every which way, really.
Yes, it's great. So you have a lot of empathy for what it's like being an agency. And I mean, you know, we are talking today about PR, and, you know, and in particular, I want us to really, you know, to help those people, you know, listening to the show, working leadership roles, to understand how best they can use PR. And yeah, I've had a very interesting kind of relationship with PR with my own agency, because I appointed a PR agency, and I kind of in my head thought that, you know, by doing this, I would get much larger recognition, I would build more awareness, and therefore I would drive loads more sales in. And actually, after about a year or so, I realized that I hadn't actually won any direct sales from the PR. Okay, this is by using an agency, and the person doing the PR was brilliant, right? I mean, this person is now very senior director, Hill and Norton out of New York, and, you know, I think it was their first job, but they were a rock star from day one. And I remember, you know, ringing up, answering the call to sort of lots of journalistic pieces that they had found people were looking for, and having to find a way for me to be able to articulate. I mean, I had to think, because you mentioned dyslexia. So I think, first of all, I want to just say on this subject of dyslexia that I think it's a superpower. I think sometimes when people talk about it, they talk about it as something that's holds you back. But in my experience, I think the people with dyslexia are actually, you know, the Branstons, and, you know, I'm pretty sure that Leonardo da Vinci was dyslexic as well. Actually, they are some geniuses, and I'm not dyslexic as such, but I do have a slight, on the spectrum, there's a couple of things that I have, but I often think they're superpowers, and I think it's how we label them. So you have to be careful, don't we, of sometimes, because the best creatives I've ever worked with have all been dyslexic. Not
Yeah.
one of them hasn't been. So there is something about visual versus, you know, auditory or written stuff. And you know, I hear what you're saying, but I also think it can be a good superpower for people in business. But what I noticed through these PR, I had to almost do phone calls, Rachel, to be able to communicate verbally, you know, rather than having to write things down.
Yeah.
So, and so what I learned was that all that effort, all that time, and it was brilliant for awareness, but I didn't get any like new business from it. And then a year later, I realized I'd spent like, let's say, £2,500-3,000 a month with this agency. These days, that's probably £3,000 to £5,000 a month, sort of starting price, maybe more. And actually, it wasn't anything that contributed, but what it did do was it created an attribution to something. So it gave us more, built trust for us. And then when people would come into our reception, they would have like back in the day when we had offices, they would have this little book. We had this folder of all the PR, and of course, the prospects would read this and go, "Oh my God!" You know, and it's almost like you kind of like trust people more. I think sometimes when you get PR, like if someone has an element of fame or you've seen them achieve something, it's almost like it builds this inherent trust. So my first sort of relationship with PR, I was a little bit mistrusting of it because I felt like it was a big investment, didn't see a direct ROI. I was probably thinking, well, in fact, I know I was thinking about it wrong now. But when I then brought my marketing manager in and she started to do PR for us, immediately we won like a £50,000 contract. And it was so weird how actually bringing it in-house, almost like then it didn't have such the pressure to bring an ROI in, and actually something that brought in, it happened. But I think PR today is so much more important than ever, and not only because there's so much noise out there and that we need to get cut through, but also because it's very good for your SEO, right? Actually, the more quality content you get, it builds up this SEO link building, which is now a whole new ethical approach to that. Back in 10 years ago, or maybe not so long, up to 10 years ago, when things got a little bit unethical with link building. So I think it's really great to be talking to you today, because I'd like to kind of, you know, talk to you through how does an agent, in fact, here's my first question to you, I guess, really, which is, you know, how does an agency owner, what was the benefit to them of creating PR for their business from your experience?
For their business, it's exactly what you've just said. It is credibility, but it is still what's the end in mind, and it's probably to win more clients. So it does both. PR does, you know, give you credibility, open up doors and create opportunities. And you know, it's great then that you can say, as featured here, when you've got your prospects, it's actually a great way to open doors as well, especially if you've got media contacts with surveys and things like that, because sometimes it's just the bigger picture. It's a part of your marketing tool. And it is, like you said, Spencer, it's the forgotten marketing tool, because we're so busy now doing our social media, you know, we're writing our blogs. So most agencies or business owners are actually doing all the hard work in that they're writing all the SEO content, they're writing all the stuff that gives value genuinely, but then they're not sending it to the media outlets that would love the articles. So it does both. It does build credibility and obviously does bring you clients. And it's about making sure you match, and it's not an ego thing. It's start with the end in mind. What is it you're looking to get out of it? But it 100% creates opportunities, like you say, and opens doors for you as well.
I think the mistake that I made in the early days was I started to put PR in my own industry press, which probably built up awareness with competition. And of course that helps because other agencies do partner. And I think I overestimated how many brands really publications through the agency industry press. But I think the bit that when I won the business, it was because actually my local newspaper ran a feature on the fact that we'd become a Deloitte Tech Fast 50 business, and someone locally thought, well, you guys are local and you're doing well, and all of a sudden that made more relevant. So it is about, isn't it? It's about making sure that when you do PR, as you say, it's about creating that awareness, but really in the areas where your target clients, or if it's a more broadsheet or a large media house where you're almost catching all, because it's such a large number of people that you might just tune into those few people that might want to procure your services.
There's a few different ways you could. Sorry, Spencer.
Yeah.
There's a few different ways you can do it. See, what you've just touched on is typically, the fact that you got regional media coverage because you had a regional angle. PR has to have some sort of relevance, whether it's newsworthy and it's a trending news story, whether it's just something comes out in the budget as an industry leader, you can talk about it, whether it's industry led and there's something's just changed in the agency world and we're now predicting what's going to be next year or what the trends are. Or indeed, it may be that you as an agency, you've just got an amazing case study of a manufacturing client or a fintech client that you've taken, a massive success from. You can use that case study and then go to the manufacturing or fintech industry magazines. So it is being strategic on how you approach it, really, and thinking about what you want from it. Is it positioning you? Is it are you going as the expert? Probably all of them you're touching upon it. Or indeed, are you looking to use PR on behalf of your clients? But what I'd say now is a great time because we've got traditional PR and digital PR. We've got the traditional broadsheets and the industry trade magazines, but it's online, it's digital. It's also very much multimedia, just like this, the Reach PLC, for example, or Business Live, they want video vlogs, they want guest speakers all the time, they want podcasts, they want written articles, they want short, long. It now could not be a better time. It almost can be a little bit, sometimes you can think, well, where do I start with it all? But it's just about thinking, starting with your end in mind, your own strategy, and then it's having, the relevance, and then it's matching it to the right type of journalists.
I think that's really good advice. I think the angle of reverse engineering almost, we often sit down and we ask agencies, what are their aspirations around, awards in the next 3 to 5 years, and trying to get them to then work backwards to understand what would it take to win Agency of the Year in 3 or 5 years, or to achieve a certain level of growth or success. I think that's the same with the PR. In a way, you almost need to say, well, where would we like to be seen, and what would we like to be talking about, and almost in a way set some goals and some targets that are focused and relevant, right, to the target audience you're trying to get to, and almost work backwards then to how can you create interesting, relevant content, or in your case, can you listen out to those journalists? What are they looking for right now, and being aware of that. Just before we go on to that side of things, one of the things that I think is really important when people are working with PR agencies, I've learned as well, is that sometimes it is the thing you just mentioned there about working with PR to help you get like I found that PR agencies can be helpful at getting you, raising your profile and helping you get speaking events as well. So it's not just about coverage, is it, PR? Sometimes it's about other areas.
Absolutely, 100%. It comes back to your end goal. Is it trying to grow your business? Are you trying to position yourself, like you said, certainly earlier, there's shortage of talent out there at the moment. Is it positioning yourself to show that you are the great agency to work for? It's what is it you're trying to achieve from it? Is it you're launching your book or your new version of your book? What is it you're trying to get out there in terms of the message? And it's matching it to the right relevant audience. But also bear in mind that you need to plan not only your own strategy, but you need to think how you plan it with the media, because they all have their own forward features. They sit down, pretty much the industry magazines may know what they're going to talk about, so they will have their own forward features list, and then you have to work back. So we're doing a PR planning event in December just to get everyone thinking, right, if you have a 6-month plan of what you want to achieve, you need to be thinking in 3 months' time what your story is going to be to get it into the consumer magazines, in 2 months' time for the trade magazines, and then your stories need to all tie in together. So whatever you're going to share now, you need to almost hold off for 2 months and work 2 months in advance for your trade magazine, so that your message is on point right across all of the media industry experts and industry trade magazines and online websites, so that you're consistent with what you're doing. So not only think of your own strategy, think about how it's going to fit in with the media outlets as well.
Yeah, and I guess people running businesses, it's quite a busy. It's always there's always lots of fires, lots of priorities, time managed. Time is always one of the biggest challenges when you're growing a business, because you can always fill the time with tasks to do. I mean, how many hours a week do you think that a CEO or a marketing manager or a leader should really be spending on PR? Because obviously it's part of a wider mix of marketing, right? So, but are there smarter ways? I mean, it sounds to me like having a strategy is the smartest thing to do, maybe more than any other area, so that you are being much more highly targeted with what you're trying to achieve. That would probably save you a lot of time, right?
It couldn't be easier now. And, if the PR agencies are watching this, or any kind of agency, you'll realize that, back in the day when we had the agencies, as you know, I'm very old school. We used to have what was called Brad, when it used to have all the media contacts in it. It was like a massive big agency book, and it was a fortune to buy. It's all online now. That's what we provide to our members. You can search for the journalists by literally the finance editor or the fintech journalist that you need to speak to. So it's being smart with it. So initially, you just need to take a bit of time and build the right media list, or collate the right media lists. You can access them. It's not just me. There's plenty of places that provide media databases. Yeah. And then once you've got those lists, you kind of know if they're short-term lists. And what I mean by that is, can I send a news story out straight away? If there's a breaking trending news story that I know I can comment on, and it's to do with fintech, and it's to do with, or agency growth, or business in general, you can send it to all the business editors or the finance journalists at the Times, the Telegraph, the papers that print within a couple of days. So it's about building your media list for the short-term media, but also then planning it for the long-term that fits in with strategy. So just being smart by creating your media list to start with is going to be helpful. Then what you can do is, like any of your marketing, you're already writing, you're probably doing something, because you've probably got a sales team, or you've got your marketing department, you're doing your LinkedIn posts. I'm saying to you, just take that one step further and say, right, this LinkedIn post, everything you do, you're going to add value. You're giving great content. We're trying to help, aren't we? Those communities, those media outlets want to do the same to their audience. They're ready-made audiences. And as you know now, it's all about quality, not quantity. And if they're the perfect audience for you, all I'm just going to say is take your LinkedIn profile, your blog, or your newsletter, and send it to the right media outlet. So it doesn't have to be too time consuming.
I've been talking a lot about quality and quantity at the moment, because it's getting so competitive that actually, in a way, you've got to get good at doing both, because otherwise you can have great quality content. I think it's probably more so, I would say, with with media as you describe it. But I think on social media, it's almost flipped the other way. It's not just quality and quantity, it's quality and quantity almost, to be able to sort of make sure that you are being heard above the noise. It's almost like, I guess, Coca-Cola and McDonald's with their media. It's so it's so pervasive with our everyday lives, and and that's almost where I feel like a lot of people are finding, the smaller companies are finding now. But in the old days, well, I say the old days, but I've always said to people, if you wanted to appear in a certain, let's say you worked in, I don't know, fintech, and there was a financial technology, and there's a a fintech publication, I would always say ring up the owner of that, or the publisher, or the editor of that, and say, who's the best PR firm you work with? Because normally those guys would have more intuition around what articles they took as a publication. And what you're saying is that they've taken this traditional Bible of contacts across all sectors, everything, and now it's all digitized, and that ultimately is behind your platform, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that
sounds quite clever. So can you tell us about Media Matchmaker then?
Oh, bless you. Thank you. I'd love to. Can I? I mean, this is something I've built when I let go of Mums in Control. I found out by accident, by a media request that was sent to me, and I didn't even know what media request or journal request was, from my PR agency that subscribed to like a media platform, and it was to go get featured in the Daily Mail. It was what was called a journal request. It was a shout out. So what I've wanted to do for years, and I've worked on it for years, and we launched in February, it's been going amazingly well, is I wanted to create a platform for agencies and business owners and entrepreneurs and associations and universities to go to one place, so that they can put their profile up, but also get the media requests in as well. So at the moment, you may or may not know, but you can. Sorry, go on.
So it sounds like what you've done, to correct me if I'm wrong, she'll make sure I answer. You've almost you've done a direct to consumer model, where you've said, look, instead of it going to the PR agencies and then the PR agencies then, and of course, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a lot of value in PR agencies by add value to those requests and can advise and can offer more strategic advice. I'm sure it's very valuable, but you're almost giving a chance for the people who maybe can't afford a PR agency to get those media requests in directly, correct?
We're doing both, Spencer. I spent a lot
Okay.
of time interviewing journalists across radio, TV, print and online, literally all of them, and to see what do you want. They want access to sources quickly. So we work with agencies, and agencies can use our account and have their own sub accounts with all their clients on as well. But they want to search for a profile and the profile pop up. And, you know, that's difficult to go through a PR agency and find the clients. I haven't got the time to do it. Journalists are time poor. They really are, but they still want quality as well. So they can go to our platform. Yes, they can put out what's called a journal request, a media request through our platform, and it goes just to the categories that you've ticked. So you're not getting any spam. So 10 years ago, when everyone was using the journal request, it was just journalists really using it for how it should have been for a shout out. I'd say 60% of the journal requests now, if not more, are just spam. Are companies that are trying to attract the journalists. It wasn't meant to be like that. So we've set the platform up so journalists now can use it for quickness. They can go to our platform, search for a fintech business or search for an agency in a certain location. They can also look through diversity through our platform, so they can look from different ethnic backgrounds. They can search for people that have disabilities, because the media, just like us, are trying to be as inclusive as possible. So our platform now reflects that. But also what we've done with our platform as well for the agencies or business owners, it's multimedia ready. So if they've got clients or indeed themselves want to comment on a news story for radio, they can put their audio soundbite in the platform. The journalist can download it. So we've looked at everything that the journalist wants and almost prioritized the journalist needs, and then thought, right, how can we make this fit for agencies and business owners to use as well? And we also train the business owners and the PRs if they've got part of their team, because it is almost like the forgotten marketing tool, but it as long as you follow simple steps, it doesn't have to be too difficult.
Amazing. So obviously when after we first spoke, which was about 3 months ago, I went and signed up, got a little help from Abby getting my profile done so that it happened properly, and probably made the classic rookie mistake, I'm going to guess, by ticking too many boxes.
Yeah,
thinking, I'll have PR requests from anybody, I don't care, and then suddenly sunk in an abundance of requests. But actually, I was really impressed by, although a lot weren't relevant, it opened my eyes actually to all the journalists asking for things. And I think I could really see the power of it, by the way. And as I kind of looked more and more and I started to refine, in fact, I refined it just recently down a lot narrower so I get a lot less more targeted requests in. Sometimes actually it makes you think also about the way that you could add some value to a journalist looking for content. So just because my day job is running a consultancy and M&A firm, it doesn't mean to say that I don't live in the countryside, and in a way there's a way to, if there's people need articles on country living, or I don't know, like some other personal verticals, there are things that I could still create, almost to create, get a slightly more balanced side of business owner, but not necessarily all of talking about the work. So it's been really fascinating exercise. I mean, so I don't know if you want to explain to the listeners kind of how the platform works and what people do, and probably comment on my initial approach as being a common mistake, I'm thinking.
And that is a common mistake, and it's perfect, because it is what we all do. So when you sign up basically for the platform as an agency or as a business owner, there's different options, and you can have a free option as a starter media pass, because my job is to make sure the journalist can find the right source. The journalist can find the person by going to a search bar. And then you can have a backstage media pass as an agency backstage media pass, where you can create up to 10 sub accounts. And then you put you basically take your LinkedIn profile, put it onto our platform. You can upload your audio, any sound bites you've got, any video stuff that you've done as well, and your bio details, so the journalist can find you. So the journalist can go to the database and say, right, what's trending in the news story today? We want to talk about, new industry trainings for 2022. So they can put in marketing into our platform, and then all the marketing agencies or anyone that does with marketing will show up. They can search and then refine it by the location, because we work with local media as well and local radio producers, which no one else has done across all of the BBC, which is great. What you can then also do is when you set your profile up, you set your preferences up. So you tick the boxes and the categories that you want to be known for. And at the same time, where you tick the categories you want to be known for, you get those journal requests coming through to your inbox. So we had a great one this afternoon, actually, for agencies, funnily enough. And it's not often you get specific, journal requests like that, but I can read it to you as an example if you wanted.
Yeah, please do.
What some people do is they'll tick, like you probably did, Spencer, business, lifestyle, women's interests, men's health.
I didn't click women's interests, if I'm honest.
Well, you never know. Let me read you so this is what came through literally at 1 o'clock today. Looking to speak to brand managers, marketing and DEI experts. I don't even know what that is, so forgive me for
diversity, equity and inclusivity.
Excellent, wonderful. Okay, so on what it means for brand to be ethical and why labeling themselves is as such isn't enough. And that was for the content strategist. So it was an in-house journalist, and that was the typical journal request that come through. We can have
I saw one earlier which made me realize that I still hadn't filtered my settings enough, which was from the BBC asking did you buy anything during lockdown that you regretted? And I thought, who couldn't answer that question?
Yeah.
Anyway.
And they ask all sorts of things. And the thing is, if that might have been for something like this for the FT, that could have been good for you, because it's still about profile. You've opened the doors, you've made a contact, but also, like I say, it's not about ego. It's what you're trying to get out of it. So that's the easy way to get the journal requests coming in. But what we have an access all areas media pass, and that's where you can access every single journalist in the UK. And there's probably 60,000 plus journalists in the UK, and you can build your list. So you can say, right, we want all the business journalists. So there's probably business journalists for all the national newspapers, probably about 200, 300 just business journalists alone that have the keyword business. And what you don't want to happen is when you send a press release, traditionally it may just reach the news desk. You don't want it to go to the news desk. You want it to go to the health writer, the business owner, the property, the fintech person. And that's what you can do with the access all areas. So we're allowing you to be reactive to our PR leads and the journalists finding you, but proactive as well, that you can send your stuff out and be ahead of the game. So if there's a breaking news story, you can comment in. Like, we've just sent an email out to, I think, about 400 journalists across national newspapers, radio producers, because it's Talk Money Week this week. So we've got some finance experts, we've put them forward, and that's of interest to them, because they'll sit down, the radio producers, and go, like Jeremy Viney can just say, what are we going to talk about? We need to talk about money, we need to talk about finance, and it'll be a topic they'll talk about. So what Media Matchmaker allows you to do is be reactive, as I say, and proactive. But more importantly, we also help the journalists get their sources. And we are just, it's like a dating app, but for business owners and journalists. No swipe.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what you're making me realize is to have a bit more empathy for them, because they're trying to find, as you rightly say, I don't know, interesting stories, from a diverse audience. And, it must be quite a tough job sometimes being empathetic with journalists to get that. And obviously, the more people they can send these requests out to, the more chance they've got of getting something highly relevant. Do you feel like that so my experience was that some of the requests came in and I was like, okay, this is really relevant, but then I was starting to almost sort of have imposter syndrome a little bit and think, well, am I really relevant for this? Is this really good? Am I good enough? Is my story interesting enough for this? I think a lot of us, I remember when I had a PR agency, I was always worried that no one would really care about what I've got to say. Does that resonate? Or
100%. I do a whole, when I do a lot of talking around the country, whole thing on being an expert and why you want experts. And I've interviewed journalists from the BBC saying, what do you look for in your experts? You know, the job of the journalist is to interview you. Your job is to be the great source of information. You know, you're not going to share information you don't know, and they're not going to ask you to be invited on to share something you can't talk about. You know, so your job is to tell a story, not sell your business. It's giving the content. So if I met you for a coffee or a beer and, you know, I asked you about your business, you're going to be able to talk from the heart. So therefore, no, you know, it's not, I can understand why you'd feel imposter syndrome, but they need new sources all the time. I interviewed a freelance journalist that writes for The Guardian. The Guardian online alone reach 500,000 unique users a day. And she was saying to me, you know, the way we, you know, with the journalism of the stories. And I said, sorry, what did you mean journalism? She went, no, journalism. You know, we have to churn the stories around. And it's because they are so busy now in that a lot of the journalists, and I've seen all the media outlets change so much. You know, I work with, I worked with the editor-in-chief of the Post and Mail. I interviewed journalists last week. I interviewed the head of the Express, you know, and, you know, they used to have double the journalists they have now probably, yet that outputting online, offline, you know, short pieces, long pieces. You can see now with this article take you 2 minutes to read or 10 minutes to read. They've had to react. And the thing is, the way they report the news is very different. So I sat and had a coffee with the editor of the Post and Mail in Birmingham, again, Brummie accent. And he said to me, now we sit down now, we're reactive to what's trending. We don't dictate the news anymore. We're reactive to the news. And you guys as agency owners or business owners can do exactly the same. You can sit down each day and say, right, spend 10 minutes. Okay, is there anything out there that's trending that I can comment on? Yes, there is. Okay, just going to send a quick email, grab the headline, right? And most of us know sales copy and what we need to do. Just keep it short and sweet. And like today's story, I can help you. I can comment on this. Here's my bio, or here's the topics I can talk about. And we get loads of success just by sending relevant intro emails.
Yeah, brilliant advice. So I think the thing that you know, what's great about your tool is you're helping to empower businesses to take more control of their PR directly, right? And that's a good thing. Now, I know that you. So, do you provide what you said a minute ago that it's more than you're speaking to both sides in a way, but do you also provide sort of online training videos as well, don't you? Because is there an element of media training that people need when they start doing PR, or
definitely, because it's all very different, you know, and a lot of agencies now sometimes might have a small PR department and now to write a press release, but might not have their client ready to go on radio. And media training could be really expensive, and then you've got to book it in. Even like TV, you know, if you're going to do a TV and want to get on TV with a news story, you've got to think in pictures. You've got to think very differently. So we've interviewed, you know, the commissioning editor for ITV Central News, you know, is in there. We've interviewed BBC producer for West Midlands. We've interviewed national journalists that share their knowledge, say, right, this is what we want from you. This is how to approach us. This is what to do, what not to do. There's a whole training in there with Janie Lee Grace and BBC Radio 2 on how to do your intro and outro ready. So if you're going to do a radio interview, help the producers, give them your intro. This is what I do. I'm an expert in. You have to position yourself. They will read your introduction, but then more importantly, give them an outro as well. You can find Rachael at mediamatchmaker.co.uk. So give them the outro as well. And it's just things like understanding what key messages you want to get across in your interviews, because what tends to happen, especially if you're doing a live interview like radio or from broadcast rather than being interviewed by a journalist, is you'll just forget what you're answering, your words, you know. So we, you know, little things we say, use some little sticky notes, put your 2 or 3 key messages down that you want to get across. Then you've said them and you can relax into the interview. So you come almost like a politician. So yes, we've got Media Matchmaker Club where we've got all the templates you can download, press releases, bio sheets, press pages. And then we've got all the interviews across, even like how to do a podcast, how to get onto podcasts, the whole lot. It's all there. So we can give you the tools. Yeah. Have you not looked at that yet?
I haven't. Yeah, I probably should read it really. Yeah, no, do you know what? I haven't gone through that yet, but it's weird. I think I'm at sort of stage 1. I'm just absorbing the requests and I'm realizing that I need to refine them. And then I think what you said at the beginning really is because, you know, a lot of what we do what we do through Agencynomics and we do is all about sort of actionable, practical cut through advice to give to people. And so sometimes, sometimes you just need to get on and do stuff, right? But then sometimes you do need to stop and have a plan. Or sometimes, like I always talk about the personal brand experience I went through where, look, I did some so I sort of started building up my social media profile, and I started to, express my opinion for the first time rather than liking and sharing everybody else's LinkedIn posts. But eventually it got to a point where I decided I needed to now apply a strategy. Why was I doing it? Who am I talking to? What am I trying to get from this? And ultimately that's now refined my approach and our approach as a business. So it's the same with this. I think I've learned that I've now got to almost write down what the plan is here, what I'm doing, target it more, understand, where I'm trying to build more coverage for myself and for my partners and for the business. And just trying to be a little bit more strategic, and then putting myself out there a bit more than stop being a voyeur to the requests and actually start responding to them.
Yeah, I think about, and also being proactive as well. See, with the database, you have access to all the journalists' social media profile details as long as they've given to us. So even if you just wanted to do a bit of quantity, reacting to the news stories, but quality as well. So you could say, right, I'm just going to pick 10 media outlets, the Telegraph, the Times, an industry magazine, and I'm going to follow the editor. I'm going to read their stuff. I'm going to retweet it. So you become the person of influence yourself. Perception is reality, PR, and that's the whole thing, so then you become the thought leader in your industry that's going to open doors to you. So it's worth it. If any of you watching this or listening, if you've got capacity for new clients and you're doing some sort of marketing or sales, PR is, I feel, a bit of a no-brainer because they're established audiences that want and are paying for content.
Are there things to watch out for when it comes to PR and doing it yourself? Are there any risks associated with it? I remember a story once where I remember a journalist rang me up when I ran my agency and had asked me had I won any pitches recently, and I said yes. I'd won quite a large UK sporting establishment, and they said, "Oh, and who did you beat?" And I told them who it was, and then the headline next week was, "This agency loses account." Didn't even mention us for winning it. It just ran the negative. So and then I thought, had I walked into that trap, and it's made me slightly more skeptical now of when when journalists outreach, I'm like, well, is there an edge? Is there, what's the angle here? Is there more to it? I mean, is all publicity good publicity still?
No, I don't think so. No, it's about being strategic, and also look, it's spending a bit of time in terms of thinking, right, where do you want to be and then looking at what do they write about. Are they sensationalists? Do they spin things? And also speaking to the journalists, if they're gonna want an exclusive, sometimes if you give an exclusive, you've got rights to say, I want to read back the article or even the headlines. Not always, but mostly if you give an exclusive. But kind of look at the angles they take. Just take a bit of time to do your own due diligence, really. So no, I don't think this, all publicity is good publicity. No, I think you have to be very careful, and think about that it matches your audience, as I say. So like you said, you're not looking at women's interests. It's not going to really be good for you to go into a Cosmo or Psychology's magazine. You want to be where your audience is. So trade industry magazines, business leaders, that kind of thing. So just think about that, and then be very careful in what you give away, but also just do a bit of homework on the journalist.
The other saying it just made me remember was, I once worked for a fantastic, in my early days of working in retail before I moved into agency world. I worked for a wonderful entrepreneur. In fact, he listened in. I was talking to Carrie Rose, who actually runs a big digital PR firm, and funny enough, he was actually commenting live. I should check the comments as well, by the way, in case there's any here. But he was actually commenting live, and he was the most brilliant, inspiring entrepreneur when it came to PR. Right, this guy, he was. He pulled everything off. And he said to me, Spencer, he said, you always believe what you read in the papers until you're in there yourself.
That's true. But look, the journalists want some sort of jeopardy, some sort of kind of controversy. That's your job to do that and provide that. It's what you want to be known for, really. You know, we see these people that go out and just wind people up. They do it because it gets them attention, but also you've got to think about your whole values of your company. So you have to keep things, you know, bear things in mind. By all means, be passionate and believe in what you do. But you know, you don't really want to be known for that person that rubs people up too much up the wrong way. But, you know, but yeah, it's
I think it's always the spin he was referring to as well. Like, you know, it was always having to spin, exaggerate everything to make the story more interesting or something. And it's trying to keep, I mean, and I think actually there is I have to say, I marvel at the current generation of agency owners coming through, because their spin is just wonderful. I mean, they are really good at it. They've kind of grown up with ways of communicating and getting things a little more interesting. But you've got to be careful, haven't you? You've got to be authentic, otherwise you're going to get caught out at some stage, right?
Of course you have. Of course you have. You've got, absolutely, you've got to go with, like anything you do in business, with authenticity, haven't you? Knowing that you are going to reach an audience that you're genuinely going to be helping. You know, you're not just, as I say, PR isn't about ego. It's about, you know, helping people, getting your message out to a wider audience. And it's a win-win scenario. Journalists need good content, they need good sources, and they need them regularly, and they want a variety of people. So, you know, think about, you're doing them as much as a favor as they're doing you. It's a partnership.
Are there good exercises for agencies, you know, who are listening to this show, to help them almost understand what is newsworthy in the business, or what could be newsworthy?
Yeah, see what's trending, see what they're talking about, you know, follow some of the journalists, you know, where you want to be. So if
maybe look at their articles and see what they've written and see whether you could have written that story sort of thing.
And also, you know, work with, you know, we've had clients as well that have used PR and certainly the media database as a way of winning new clients, because the media love stats, you know, especially industry kind of stuff, stats, because they haven't got the time to do it. So if you can go out and put a survey to them or get the stats and do the hard work, but it can open doors for you. So let's say you wanted to win new fintech clients. You could basically create a campaign. You could go to the magazine that you want to be in, or the trade magazine, and say, look, we're thinking of doing this industry trends in 2022. What are the stats you want to know? What are the questions? We'll put it out to the marketplace. You're then seen as, so you can say to the business owners, then, we're working with the Telegraph or the Times or this industry magazine. You know, these are our questions. Can you answer it? And it gets you to open the doors. And again, it's a win for them. So it's a great way to kind of go through in a back doorway, I suppose, if you like. And we've had clients that, you know, that have won clients just because of that, because everybody wants to be in the media.
Yeah, and you shared with me a wonderful story before we went live today about an agency owner who just managed to get 2 articles on the BBC. Is that right?
No, we got 2 articles in the Sun. Costs
The Sun. Oh, right.
Yeah, one of the agencies. He responded to 2 media requests, and he sent them to me. Actually, he put it on LinkedIn last week, and he's got an agency, and he just responded to them. He said it didn't take no time at all, and this is the article that he got, so he was like, "This is easy, thank you very much." I was like, "Wow, that's just great." It really does.
Do you know what? I just literally had a look while you were talking, and I can see for some reason the algorithm yet again not showing me everyone's posts, but well done to Cactus for that brilliant piece of PR. Yeah, I can see him now talking about it. So isn't that great? And he's praising your platform too, which is even more not lovely. So great. Well, look, we'll put the platform in the link, and you say there's a free trial if people want to try it out.
Yeah, they can start up with a free backstage trial, and then for 30 days to give it a go. But I'm always happy to talk to agencies, because we're also looking to partner with agencies, you know, whether they're PR partners, because we have a lot of business owners that want PR agencies. So if there's any agencies that are looking for more clients, let's have a conversation. But yeah, there's a free trial that they can sign up for. And then if they want to upgrade to the agency pass, we can set them up so they can have up to 10 sub accounts as well. So they can create all their clients, and then they get all the client leads through, not just for themselves, but for their clients as well.
I think it's been an interesting journey for me. I think it's because as you rightly said, it forces you to, I mean, in the past, we've kind of something would happen. We'd write a press release, and then we wouldn't really know where to send it. And to be honest with you, it's kind of a bit push. It's a bit old school, pushing a message out that probably no one wants to hear about a new starter necessarily. You know, maybe they do, but actually it's changing that mindset to listening, you know, rather than pushing. And but also, as you rightly said at the very beginning, forcing the platform forced me to get some of the profile set up, which maybe then obviously gives across more. And actually, interesting point on the profile stuff. How important is photography around stories? Because I'd imagine that journalists don't only need to look for written content. I would imagine if there was strong photographic content, that would only be an advantage for a story as well.
100%. You know, not just stories with pictures, you know, audio, as we say, video too. They want as much as you can put in and give to them to make their life easy. So but you've got to think what that story is going to look like in pictures, because gone are the days when they used to send a photographer out. They just don't have the budgets for it like they used to, or the news stories are turning around that quickly. So if you can provide them with them, don't send them a high res image through a platform. You know, you can upload it, just send them the low res image. So that they can use it. And 100%, you're gonna do really well if you've got someone that can help you, that you're already doing all that side. Absolutely,
I guess it saves them on the image rights of paying someone else for an image. And in fact, I remember a good friend of mine. He was in one of the broadsheets with the story, and he'd obviously provided them with this wonderful picture, a team photograph that was taken like with a drone or something, so it was like angled down, and they, you know, and I remember thinking he must have half a page article just because the photograph was so wonderful, you know. So I guess it can actually make quite a big difference.
The hardest thing that people find, I find with business owners and even agencies, because we're so busy, is what's the story really? Have I got a story that's newsworthy? We give you guidance on that. You know, it doesn't have to be difficult. There are trending news stories. There's over 400 national and celebration days. You get access to all of those. It's just thinking, see what's trending, set up Google alerts, what's going on in your industry, comment on it. You know, it can be really easy if you just pick 3 or 4 strategies. What case studies have you got? The media love case studies. You know, pick 3 or 4 strategies and then just apply it. But that's probably just exactly what you're doing with your marketing anyway. So, you know, it's easy to come up with the stories, but don't be too scared. But like you said, we've launched a business, or it's been 10 years. That's not really the story. That's, you know, it's the so what. You know, you've got to find, well, you know, it started off with a caretaker that's now, or the junior, you know, person that started now is running the company and he's only 24. That's the story behind it, you know. So it's, and with our interviews, we help you find the stories, and we do live events as well once a month where we actually do PR training with you to give you some guidance.
Oh, that's great to hear as well. That's cool. I think, I think that's just been brilliant speaking to you. And I think that the whole, as I said, you know, PR, it's what your platform's doing is making it more, or platforms like yourself, they make it more accessible ultimately for those people who maybe don't have the budget in the early stages. And I still feel like there probably is a stage for a lot of businesses where actually having a PR firm would be invaluable in terms of helping with the strategic thinking and trying to almost hold you to account a little bit, to get, rather than you having to hold yourself to account. So I can still see the value really strongly that PR businesses can bring to the 100%. Table. But for those of you who can't afford it, I think this is for the early stage agencies, many of whom listen to this show, it's quite a nice way for them to feel empowered and make a start.
It can complement each other really well. You know, I mean, typically a PR agency, like you said, it might be between £3,000 to £5,000 a month you'll spend. You know, with ours, our top paying is £1,500 or £1,480 plus VAT for the year. You know, so it means you've still probably got budget then to work with an agency to maybe write you 1 or 2 stories a month. Then you've got all the contacts yourself. You know, so there's ways that you could do. We've got access to all of the freelancers as well in our database that, you know, are write content about specific things. So, you know, you can access those. But we work really nicely with agencies. So whether you're looking at taking it in-house yourself or you are the agency, hopefully it should just be part of something, even if you work alongside somebody.
Well, you're so right, because as I said, I just remembered that, you know, last night I actually sent an email to someone asking them how much they would charge to do PR for us. And that's really because I think in a way your platform has made me more aware of what needs to be done, but also from the point of view of understanding you know, it's if you've got the time, then it's great. And I probably have got the time to do so. We have got time to do some of it, but not all of it. And so actually, it depends how big you think with it all. But so I think you are right there. Not mutually exclusive approaches at all. And I think they actually complement each other, as you say.
They really do, having a hybrid approach to it, that they use the agency, they use the platform as well. So we just had a client that was launching her own national day, actually. And we basically sent an intro email out. We pitched it. So the PR had written the angle of the story. We put it through the platform and she got an exclusive with Reach PLC that went into OK magazine. It also got featured in, I think it was the Express or somewhere else as well. And Sky News, it's just gone in Sky News last week. And that just was because she started off an exclusive. And that was a nice combination of she had the platform, she had the contacts, but she's still got someone to write the release for her.
Amazing. Right. I can't believe the time has just flown on this episode. We've been talking for 55 minutes, but it's been delightful to have you here. And I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of just bring this topic up on the agenda a little bit, because I think it's one of the marketing areas that we don't talk about enough. And so I really appreciate you giving up your time today for us to explain everything. We'll put all of your details in our show notes and the link to the platform. Check it out, everybody.
Thank you.
No worries. And that is a wrap for this episode. Thank you for all listening. Whether you're listening on YouTube or you are live on LinkedIn or you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or one of the other audio channels, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. Don't forget, please like and subscribe. Leave us a lovely review if you can too. It's always appreciated. And until next time, that is a wrap.